All right. Well, hello, 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 and happy Tuesday. Welcome to the Closer to the Heart podcast. And I am very excited. Today we have a jam packed show for you. Today we have firsthand testimony for you today. And it's a very powerful subject matter that we're going over. So without any further ado, I'm going to bring up my co-host, Jeannie. Hello, Jeannie. How was your week? How you doing?
Hey, Christina. Good, thanks. How are you?
I'm
This is
good.
a
I'm good.
very, this is a very close. Don't know if I told you this is a very close subject to my heart. It's how I ended up, I guess, if you like, in 2010, waking up because
Mm,
I was confronted by a false report from Child Protective Services,
mm.
and so I saw the dark side of the system. So here, I'm really glad that we're doing this show. I think a lot of parents who I know that are currently in the midst of this battle with the system can't speak out, and they are truly voiceless at the moment because people don't realise parental rights are literally almost non-existent in the Western world, at least what we know. Yeah.
It's very true. And you know what? Our guest today, Kamilah Johnson, is not only has a firsthand testimony in this regard, but she's actually a subject matter expert in a lot of the workings behind and how that all comes to be. So there's a lot of delusions, illusions, whatever you want to call, that we hope to shatter today. If you thought that Child Protective Services is here for your well-being, hopefully we will dispel that today, because this is a very important topic. We absolutely need to shed light on the situation, because you're right, parental rights are not what they think they are. And so without any further ado, I want to introduce our special guest speaker today, Kamilah. Kay, you've been on with us before in the Power Girl Power Hour, telling your firsthand story of the horrific
Mhm.
story that you're living through right now. We've also done a documentary for you, stringing some of your incredible videos together that you've done on TikTok, that you've had on YouTube, that you've done podcasts on YouTube, just to try to tell the story. But we wanted to bring you in today, not only to tell your story, but also to offer your subject matter expertise, because this goes way deeper than just what's happening with your family, right? I mean, you've been speaking out against government corruption, lies, fraud, and deception for quite some time now. And we have
Mhm.
to wonder if what you're going through isn't some kind of weird retaliation for all of that, right?
Right, right. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
So why don't you give
Um,
them just a brief rundown of, they know who I am, they know who Jeannie is. Hello out there, Power Girl Multiverse. Hello out there, LinkedIn, to everybody's listening, either live or after the fact. Kay, why don't you give them a little bit of a background on who you are, how this all kind of started, and we have some media too to kind of support your firsthand experience, because it
mhm.
has become kind of an epidemic, right?
Yes, yes, most definitely. My name is Kamilah Johnson. I go by Kay, and I consider myself to be a sovereignty consultant, where I basically educate my community on the true law, the supreme law of the land, which is the universal law of God, as well as the constitutional law. I recognize that everything is spiritual, and this is how these people operate. They set up to drain us of our energy. However, and when you accept the titles and you accept the personal persona that they give us, then that is when you are basically sucked into the system to play the game. It's all a game. And that's what I'm really that's what I'm really beginning to see as I am travailing the game at this current moment. And basically, my 1-year-old son, Mayani Johnson, was medically kidnapped under the name of Noah. Because I refuse to allow Texas Children's Hospital in Houston, Texas, to perform harmful medical research and genetic testing on him, and I refuse to administer to him harmful medications that were giving him negative side effects. So, as a result of this, uh, as a means of retaliating after I filed grievances on them, they basically contacted CPS on me and kidnapped my son.
Mm. And they know really how to do that. I had a situation in 2014 where I'd gone into hospital post home birth, and they gave me IV saline too quickly. I ended up in ICU because they set my potassium levels sky high. But I was actually raped in ICU as a form of submission because I refused a lot of various treatments. And in the end, I ended up discharging myself. But what they did was they thought, and I actually reported this rape to the registrar at that time, and she just went white. But what they did was they sent Child Protective Services out the day after I was I was discharged, to kind of remind me how much power that they had. So I got rid of them because I was quite experienced by this stage on how to deal with Child Protective Services. And I let the matter slide because I knew that when I had a newborn, that the matter of fighting over a rape in ICU simply wasn't worth it. And when I did consult with a doctor that I know after, she said, "You did absolutely the right thing. You went and protected your family." And that is the ultimate thing that you have to bear in mind when you're in this situation, is your family comes first, even though there are bigger issues at play, because those bigger issues have to be dealt with on a legislative level. We have to raise awareness that people understand there are 400,000 children right now in America in foster care, and 43,000 in Australia, which represents in Australia 3% of children are in foster care. This is a huge problem, a huge problem. And for you, Kaya, my heart goes out to you. It's terrible to have a baby that has been ripped from you, and you as a mother absolutely know best what is right for your child, and that they don't, even if you didn't know best, that they don't work with you, that they don't, meet you where you're at and try but instead what they're trying to do is completely take you out of the picture. And this is how Child Protective Services has been weaponized. And it's not just weaponized in the medical sphere, which is the most common, but they do it in schools, through the education system, and in the divorce courts. It's like this the bad boy that they can do the dirty work. And what I was quite surprised to find when in my interactions with CPS was that you as parent, even if I've got my brother's a lawyer, even if you've got your own team of lawyers, is that you don't actually have rights. And so you need to play the game. You need to have your experts in your corner. You need to know what to say, when to say, that every interaction with Child Protective Services or any one of their agents, your doctor, social worker, counsellor, they are all recorded against you. Like, of course, they can be recorded for you if you have people within the system that actually give a damn about your case and about winning, and for me, that was winning over certain people in the system who are very high up, but even they got, I guess, punished for helping me. One of them did anyway, for even just reaching out to me and being a human. She didn't really do anything other than, reaching out and comforting me and being a human. And she ended up being demoted from her position and not allowed to have any more contact with clients. But yes, it is a game. It's how I think part of this podcast today, people want to ask questions, is how do you avoid or protect your family against this system until we as a society pull it down and totally, end this whole trafficking of children, which is what it is. It's trafficking. People think that's quite a heavy word, but ultimately that's what it comes down to, a lot more than what is. We'll go into deeper, but it's very, very dark. What I have discovered from it personally, that's why it ended up me in a huge rabbit hole of, I guess, what we call conspiracy now, but it's no longer conspiracy. I think it's very much mainstream. We have a lot of supporting material and supporting things that happened in the legal system. People within the political legal system have also, and doctors who've also spoken up about the huge corruption and trafficking within the child protection services.
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, it was quite advantageous this morning, Jeannie, when I went into our private chat for the show and saw that you had shared this link that is fairly recent. This post was August 15th on X, talking about a documentary coming out. I mean, Camilla and I have been talking about this for weeks now. I got your information from Libra Moon 73, Lee Daniels, who is a big friend of the show. We're big fans. And so this has been going on, I don't know, about a month or so, right? We've been talking, and I've been trying to boost your story in whatever way I can. There are many other podcasters that are working with you. A lot of people are resonating with your story. The numbers, of course, on other channels, not on this channel because we're so heavily shadow banned, but the numbers on other channels are just skyrocketing where you're able to tell your story. But then to wake up this morning to be getting ready, for this podcast that, Jeannie and I have been putting together for a couple of weeks now. And then to see that, as Jeannie and I put it, the Matrix is almost, is working with us. So it's just, I feel very blessed to be, as Jeannie says, on the cutting edge of this information you pointed to this, Camilla, and we'll watch a little bit of this in a second, but you pointed to this. This is what happens. And this is why I have dubbed the term freedom warrior. And I'm trying to really make it a household name, because like Johnny Depp says in Blow, you go into prison with maybe a bachelor's in marijuana and you come out with a master's in cocaine, right? I mean, that's kind of what happens when you're a freedom warrior and you're targeted by this system. All of us, and we've talked about it before, Jeannie, where you're just a normal, average, everyday, law-abiding citizen, and the next thing you know, you're persona non grata, you're pariah of this of what do you call it, society. And it's all because the system came after you and you're just trying to survive that story. Camilla's story is probably, and I've seen a lot of freedom warriors since I started podcasting in this way, because this was really the basis of Power Girl Productions from the very beginning, boosting these stories that nobody else is boosting. Not even alternative media is lifting up these people. That Automatics, who, by the way, is in the chat. Hey, Autumn, great to see you. She is our resident victims advocate. She's traveling all over the country right now, heading her way to Colorado to get ready for the Targeted Individual Conference for Targeted Justice there in Colorado. And we're going to be doing a live presentation for that with boots on the ground. Nick Tucker's going to be here as my co-anchor for that show. It's going to be very powerful. That's going to be next week, late next week. But so we're all coming together. It's very interesting that God has really touched the Power Girl multiverse, especially over the last few months, because we've really leveled up. I was telling you yesterday, Kay, on the phone, this new team that he is assembling, these people, that are true freedom warriors. Jeannie's one of them. Nick is one of them. Autumn is another. We have many behind the scenes whose name and face never even get up on panel, but that we try to support behind the scenes. But this is becoming very, very common. And I believe that in order to face that challenge, God is truly assembling the warriors. I mean, this new breed of warrior that's come just over the last few months, as I've tried to level up and not give up, is truly inspiring. And your story is no different. You're definitely one of those people, not just a compelling story, but you are a very compelling character. You have a great deal of character. You have a great deal of integrity. You understand the moment in time that we're in. And not only that, you're leaning into it as a warrior, and you're fighting these people not even on their own terms. I mean, you're leveling up the game because you're exposing the fraud, right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. It's all contractual. Once you touch and agree with these people, that's when they basically capture you. That's even with on the medical side. Once they come and they say, oh, your child has congestive heart failure, or you have cancer, you have this disease, you have that disease. Once you receive it, now they have the power over you. But if you don't stand in agreement with these people, there's no way that you're binded to them, which is the same with the birth certificate. The birth certificate is a bond. That basically means that you are bonded to them. It's an adhesive contract. You know what I mean? So you can make contracts verbally, spiritually, and in written form and in silence, So if we recognize that, then we can put things in this proper perspective and know how to equip ourselves with the tools that we need to move forward.
That's right. And understanding that birth certificate is really the beginning of it, right? That's the beginning of the bond of the mindset that Jeannie's talking about, where they actually think they own these children. They think the state thinks they own the children, that you have no rights over them.
they put it in a very benign way. They talk about it as a tribe raising the children. We're all one big tribe, and I think Hillary Clinton was very good at that. And the Clintons put in laws. I think it was in we called it here. It was the Adoption and Safe Families Act 1997. And that set into place a lot of the funding for all of this. And this is pretty much all around the Western world that I know of. And what happens is, in that film that we're going to show a little bit of, it discusses how each child within the foster care system is worth $150,000, and that with each adoption, it's about $4,000 to $6,000 that the system receives. Now, if the child has special needs or has serious medical needs, that's even more money for the system. So the people in the game, or who are in the system, sometimes they're just doing their job, right? They're just going about their way, and so they're part of this cog, and they're often quite disconnected from it because they don't want to believe that they're part of something that's truly evil.
Mm-hmm.
And they want to believe, and they want to make you UK. They want to make you to be the bad guy. They really, really want to believe that in order to keep on doing their job. And what happens is your file will be there if you ever get access to your file. And they'll try and, if they can, they'll try and make stuff up about you. And whenever they hand that file, like in hospital system, when you've got a nurse and they hand over to the next nurse, it's like a bit like Chinese whispers, really. And they'll come along and they'll say, okay, she's a bit crazy. I don't know what they might say, but some of the terms that they would use, say for myself, would be like home birth mother, vegetarian,
anti-vaxxer,
anti-vaxxer, non-compliant, and then they would hand it over to the next person, and the next person's view of you is already quite clouded. So by the time it gets to anyone else, they're like, oh, we know exactly who this person is, and we've boxed them in a certain way, and we're going to, and not only that, we're going to make sure that they go to prison or they get punished for being who they are, and we'll even make stuff up because that's our job. Our job is to protect the children. They don't care about the family. And when you realize that the money system is weaponized against you, I mean, $150,000 American dollars for each child in care, and there are 400,000 of them right now. That's $60 billion, and we're not even, I don't even know if that calculates externally to all the lawyers, to all the other support systems that are held up through the courts. It's a lot of people's paychecks here that are involved in this whole child trafficking ring. And it's an organized crime, and it actually goes further than just about protecting children. It goes into a very dark side of, as you say, organ harvesting, adrenochrome. I mean, that's not the majority, but there is that element, because if you can't keep track of children, if children in the system go missing, this is a real crime. Who's being held accountable for the children in the system that completely go missing? They don't call them missing children, they call them runaways. So where are they? And when the numbers itself show that children are sexually abused in the system, who's held accountable? People should be in jail for this. But because they've got government titles, they can go in front of the courts and actually perjure themselves, and they don't go to jail. And we had some footage there of that too, which we can show later on, of CPS sitting in front of a court saying, oh yeah, but we're perjuring ourselves, we're lying, but hey, it's okay because we're CPS. They are power unto themselves. They hire criminals into CPS, which is also documented. Like, what is this? Hiring criminals and then having those criminals completely have no checks and balances and able to do what they please to parents, write what they like in the reports. And those reports are sent into the court system. So that's why parents have to understand how the game is played, so that they have people in their courts to counter all of those things that are being brought forth by their medical experts, by their social workers, by their psychologists, that you have to have your team assembled ready to fight that on that level. Otherwise, they will totally sink you and they will take your children.
Oh, and here's the thing. I mean, my experience has been you can try to assemble a team, but the problem is that there's the mindset of the silent M masses is that CPS is a government agency that's there to protect children. That's, I mean, in a headline society where people only read the headlines and they don't get into the details of any stream of information, then that's a big hurdle. That's something that's very, very difficult to get beyond. Luckily, to our original point, the matrix is starting to catch up. So there's been quite a lot of exposure that's happened over the last few years. We saw what happened with the pandemic and how the tables are starting to turn. I don't know how lies sustain, except that people are very committed to their lies. But this is why the freedom warrior is so powerful. And especially when we start to assemble the way we've been doing, it starts to break and crack at the veneer of this delusion that we all live in. So let's take a really close look, because this to me was just incredible that this was coming up. Again, we've been working on this podcast for quite some time. We're trying to build up to this subject matter because it is delicate. It is difficult to hear these stories, and it's really hard for us to wrap our brain around how truly, to Jeannie's point, nefarious these government agencies are. So let's just take a few. This is the movie that's just come out as we've been planning this podcast. So again, God doing for us what we can't do for ourselves. A little bit of qualification that this isn't three crazy women on a panel. This is actually happening, guys. Let's take a look at this.
The Department of Child Protective Services has become a protected empire built on taking children and separating families. That caseworkers and social workers are very often guilty of fraud. They withhold and destroy evidence. They fabricate evidence, and they seek to terminate parental rights unnecessarily. That the separation of families and the snatching of children is growing as the business grows, because state and local governments have grown accustomed to having these taxpayer dollars to balance their ever-growing budgets. My report is concerned with the children and parents caught up in legal kidnapping.
Save the baby, save the baby, save the kids. Have the baby, let it grow, just let it live. Save the baby, save
we bring social workers into homes of parents to help them deal with how to raise their children.
And then it appears the Department of Child Safety has lost them.
Don't want the same thing for your seed. How you go and take that life and be back out here on your knees? What if your mama aborted you? How that statement make you feel? You tell me.
When in the last few months, I've done a series of investigations into CPS. Until now, CPS told me they had no comment, but now they are giving us access.
2 Child Protective Service workers are facing charges in the murder of a 3-year-old Detroit boy. Today, it was the state manager's turn to take the stand.
But to me, these numbers seem very alarming. The latest numbers show that in April 2020, the Arizona Department of Child Safety listed 229 runaways and 42 missing children. That totals 271 children that have been taken by the Arizona Department of Child Safety.
Save the baby, save the baby, save the kids. Have the baby, let it go, just let it live. Save the baby, save.
Now, I wanted to say that I actually posted that on LinkedIn yesterday, and I was quite surprised. I got a comment. I wasn't quite surprised, but a comment. That is, what was her name? Oh my goodness. It was a senator, and she was actually, Linda, I think it was Schaefer, Senator Schaefer, and she was actually murdered, and she was shot in the chest, and her husband was also, and there was also a lot of other whistleblowers. And you can see how corrupt this system is. If they don't care and have a respect for a former senator, and they actually outed her, what will they do to the ordinary person? And it is all tied into, we've got this comment here about automatic 1969. I went into battle to keep my daughter from mandatory vaccinations in school and had to file legally. And this is a really tragic situation that we have now. Schools are administering vaccines, and there is a court case that I sent you in the chat if you wanted to bring that up, Christina, where the court actually ruled that a child had received a COVID-19 vaccine. I think it was 6 years old or so, and that the father was unable to sue. And this is what I would suggest to any parent, if they are still sending their children to school and they're not homeschooling for whatever reason, that you absolutely do not have your children at school the day that they are giving out vaccines, because you just don't want to risk it. You don't know what's going to happen that day. Your child is in a very vulnerable situation. They don't have an advocate for them. So one day of missing school is absolutely worth the protection that you're going to have, that your child is completely safe. And this court case also proves that, you know, a lot of parents think that, okay, the schools will comply, and I've got my wishes down on paper saying not to vaccinate my child. And this is a COVID-19 shot. This is one of the deadly ones. And they'll just override those rules. They'll say things like, oh, look, you know, your child had the wrong tag on. I've heard of children having to run away at school, hide in the toilets, because their well-meaning teachers wanted to have them jabbed. And that's the thing. It's coming from, often these people are coming from this kind of zeal that they really believe in the pro-pharma, and they want to protect the kids. So they think, oh, well, the dumb parents are at work, so we're just going to go and take this child, and then later on we'll just lie. We'll just tell the parents that we got their names mixed up, or we didn't find that form. And people have to wake up and understand that the system will not protect them. If they think that they're going to be able to sue, it's not going to happen. There's a whole infrastructure put in place already that prevents this. I mean, this may change in the years to come as we, you know, raise awareness, as more people become politically active on this particular issue, because that's it. You know, as you say, Christina, we need to do the work here, that people need to understand that we're not just three crazy women here, that all these parents who have been marginalized, whose kids have been medically kidnapped or socially kidnapped through the school system, they are not just crazy, but they are real living beings that absolutely love their children, who've been separated and who the system is abusing, and wrongly so. And that these people need to be held accountable for what they're doing. These people are criminals. It's criminal behavior disguised as good, as disguised as I'm just doing my job, but it's actually criminal behavior. I mean, you can't
Absolutely.
just take a child,
And it's
you can't
happening.
take a child and assault them with a vaccine. You cannot do it. That is assault.
That's exactly what's happening to Mayani, right?
Yes.
Okay. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that? What's happened to Mayani since he's been in custody medically?
They have performed heart surgery on him without parental consent, claiming that he had a cardiac emergency cardiac issue, claiming that he has a thyroid problem. And then they've also vaccinated him, even though he is immunization exempt. They vaccinated him. They are still giving him medications that I don't even know what the names of the medications are. I requested to know so that I can do my research, but they are still giving him the medications. I don't know what vaccinations they've given him, but the first time that I was able to see him on August 7th, that's when I found out that they had in fact done the second round of immunizations on him, despite him already being immunization exempt. And when I brought it to the caseworker, I told her, you know, he's immunization exempt. Why did you give? She's talking about, well, you didn't tell us. I said, well, when did you ask to give him immunizations? You've just been doing whatever you want to do. And you spoke about the caseworkers lying and the whole infrastructure and the affiliates lying and falsifying documents and records. That's exactly what they've been doing, because all of his medical records are under the fictitious name of Noah. Where they came up with the name Noah, I don't know, but that's how they are hiding and basically classifying all of his medical records and everything that they've done in regards to him.
Yeah, it's absolutely devastating what they can do. I had a situation where, because all my children were so healthy and unvaxxed, and they found out that they'd never seen a doctor for illness, that they forced me essentially to have them checked by a pediatrician. So I went along, because at the time I had to play the game. That was you have to work out in your own strategy what's the best way to play this game. So I did. I went along, and the pediatrician was actually quite hostile towards me. So I found I thought the best way to actually do this would be to write a letter explaining introducing who I was and what our family situation was, and to really build that rapport with her, because she'd obviously got some file about us, decided what she wanted to. And I wrote the letter and I sent it to a nurse friend who's quite senior in the system. And I said to her, and I got her to check it, and I said, what do you think of this letter? And she sent it to another pediatrician to have him read over it, with fresh eyes, to see what his first impression of the letter was. And she came back to me and she said, yep, absolutely, send the letter. You need to send this letter to her. So I did send her the letter. And by the next appointment, there was no more talk about getting the children up to date or diets or anything like that. She had a quick look over, discharged the case. And I think she in order to sort of justify the interaction, she organised and gave a referral for some speech pathology sessions for a couple of my boys. And then they basically walked away and disarmed them in that particular way. But it was touch and go there. When you have someone when they're against you in the system, you don't have any rights. Once they've built this picture up of you, they will fight. They know they can just falsify documents and say whatever against you. They can go to court and say all sorts of things about you that aren't true and not have to really justify it. And they can have their so-called experts come along and make up things because they have the power to do it. They know that they have the power over you. And how you navigate that system with a sick child is even worse. Because I think Kay, I think Christina mentioned there was special needs, and I feel that that's one of the things that CPS does target because of the funding, special needs and Aboriginal children and First Nations children. That's why a high proportion of children in Australia are from First Nations and Aboriginal, because there's an extra bit of funding that's attached to those children, and it all feeds into this whole money-making scheme that each child is worth dollars. In fact, that's how I got in. This is what happened. Initially, what happened was the school across the road from me was declining in enrollments. And we were living in a small town. And this woman, she was part of the system. And she knew that we were homeschooling through someone else. So she wanted to get us into trouble because her delusional belief was that if she got us into trouble, that would be an extra, I don't know, 3 or 4 children into the primary school that had declining enrollments, and each one of those children was worth $10,000. But not only just the dollar value there, but the fact that they would probably not lose a teacher or get an extra teacher. So it's all these kind of motivations. Like, people talk about how communism versus capitalism, but it's really almost a capitalist system within the child protection services. It's weaponizing it through a monetary means that gives people incentives to take your child. And because whether they consciously know it or they're not, they know that the numbers are there, they know the work is there, so then they will keep them in the system. And as you say, and it's incredible that they've renamed your child Noah. Like, they're really trying to hide something here, because how do you link that file of your child to this fictitious name, Noah? And they can just pretty much destroy any evidence.
Yeah, I know that the one thing I keep hearing is power. First of all, they don't have any power. The only power they have is the power that we give them by continuously talking about the things that they do. We're not dealing with people. These are not people. These are not people with spirits of compassion and kindness and of love. These are not people we're dealing with. And another thing is the money. There's no money. Money's not money. Money has no value. It's the energy of the people. It's the energy of the children. It's the energy of the parents from every aspect, from every angle. Because if your average person doesn't get up and go to work each day, then the economy will not flow. So it's the energy that is thriving, that is keeping these systems functioning the way that they are functioning, and the belief that they have the power is what is keeping them in power. So how I keep myself afloat is that I know that I am the power. I know that what I say is what goes. And although this is a part of the journey, Only thing that they can do to me is what I have allowed them to do. So if I continually resist, then they will continue to persist, and they will drain my energy, put me in a state of depression, put me in a place where I cannot think clearly, where I cannot hear the divine source speaking to me and guiding me, and I cannot move according to my intuition. So therefore, I know that these structures are set up to fail. Everything that they consider themselves doing to us, they are only doing to themselves. The money is not the thing. The money is, if once you rip a mother away from their child, it kills them spiritually.
That's
When a
right.
mother, the matriarch system, they say, oh, the man is the head, the man is the head. That's impossible, because the woman is who births the nation. Without the woman, nothing will go. So as long as you can keep the woman in a detrimental state of mind, the world will continue to be the way that it is. So I see things on a different perspective from other people. You know what I'm saying? So as sovereign, when we speak of legislation, regulations, mandates, policies, codes, none of that is even real. That's what they want us to argue. They want us to argue all of the little in-betweens, all of the little hearsays, all of those things to keep us in a state of confusion, because the enemy is the author of confusion. So as
That's
long
right.
as we are going back and forth and fueling the confusion, we are persisting, we're keeping them afloat. No, these people don't have any power over me. They are not the powers that be. They create illusions, they create controversy, they create division. And I won't participate in that, because at the end of the day, I know that victory is mine. I am a champion, I am a winner, and every parent or every mother and father, and then you have to think of the etymology of the words. What is a child? What is a parent? What is civil? This is equity. They dealing in a whole different they dealing in a whole different format. So when you go in, oh, my child, I'm the parent, you're adopting the terminologies that they give you, when that's not even what your child is. It's deeper.
It
It's
goes
way
deep.
deeper than that. You know what I mean? So I look beyond the surface level. So yeah, true enough, you change his name. They don't have immunity. There's no immunity for them. They know that they don't have immunity. You know, it's just the way that you have to maneuver these systems. It's chess. They want to see you act erratic, especially when you lose your child. You get upset, you get angry, you go off on them, you cuss them out, then they say, oh, she's crazy, she needs a psych evaluation, she's not taking her medication, she's this, she's that. That allows them to label you.
That's
But
right.
silence confuses the enemy. So I sit in
Mm,
silence and I watch them. I let them hang themselves. I'm
that's
gonna
right.
give you just enough rope to do what you need to do, because at the end of the day, I'm already victorious. I've already won this. I'm not fighting anything. That's how I
Yeah, and
see it.
look, at this stage too, we probably should remind viewers to watch that podcast that we made a few weeks back. Who are they? The grandmasters behind the agenda. It's
Mm-hmm.
had about 2,700 views so far, which is
Mm-hmm.
pretty good. And that exposes what we're talking about here, Kay. Yes, I guess, look, I'm talking about it on a humanistic level. If you want, they do have power, but our power within is obviously greater. When you're going through a situation like this, you absolutely need the spiritual power in order to overcome it. And they will, you have to get charge of your emotions and realize that it's all a bit of an act, a game, that you
Mm-hmm.
as mother, it is your child, and nothing will ever separate that. And you have to believe that when you're right in the midst of all of that, you have to believe that no matter what happens, nothing will separate that bond from you and the child, even if they do try. Spiritually, there is that divine connection. But I guess I'm talking about it on a humanistic level, what in terms of what the audience will understand as power. That this idea that CPS is good, that they're doing it the work for the people, and that these systems were put in place for our benefit, and they actually aren't. And I think it's the whole same thing with the vaccination thing. A lot of people believed it was just a mistake, they were just side effects, but that actually the whole purpose of vaccination is to change the genetics of people, to poison children and to make them customers for life. That is the ultimate goal. We've got even pediatricians recommended what, the a safe sort of vaccine schedule are now reneging on it and realizing that data doesn't support it and that it is absolutely poisoning them. But it's changing the narrative to help people understand that it is a system that by design is assaulting families. It's not an accident. They're not there to it's not just a few bad players there. There are good players in the system, but the system is inherently bad. That's the difference. It's the difference from saying it's a good system with bad players as opposed to a bad system with some good players in it. The whole system is corrupt to the core. It's designed to be corrupt and to traffic children. I mean, and when you look at the data, you think, well, how is it that the numbers are going up? If the Child Protective Services, if they were doing their job, surely every year the numbers would be dropping. And it's the same with when you think about it with vaccines. What is the ultimate goal of vaccination? Is it child health? Because if it's the case, why is the US some of the worst child health in the world and yet the most highly vaccinated? And every year they add more vaccines to the schedule and the child health outcomes get worse. What's the autism rate now? Something like 1 in 28. I know there's a whole controversy about that, but in terms of all of those measures, whether it be asthma, autism, heart disease, cancer, all these measures, child health is at its lowest point. We've never really seen. When I was growing up, you didn't have kids with cancer. Just wasn't a thing. You never heard of it. Now it's incredibly common that children have cancer. So
and just to interject there real quick, just to point out some of the obvious here. Kamila's dealing with Children's Hospital in Texas. Who, I mean, when you think of child cancer treatment, who do you think of? Children's Hospital.
Hospitals, yeah.
There's a
Shriners, St. Jude, and people donate. It's you speaking to the what they say, you speaking to the choir. People they are programmed to believe the system and they are programmed to work within the system. So these diseases are patent. They have created these diseases and patent them, like you said, by design. So when you're going after infrastructure, what is the foundation of this infrastructure that you're dealing with? Them snatching kids and taking kids and breaking up families, that is nothing new. They just reformed it and gave it a title. They've been snatching children from the plantations. They were snatching children from the Hispanics, from the indigenous. This is nothing new. They just put it on paper and gave the structure some letters. So you have to think about it by design. So if that is how they have set it up to be, then what exactly is it that the people can do to stop them? We've been fighting this war. It's been going on for so long. You know what I mean? So we have to put on a different set of lenses. Yeah. You have to put on a different set of lenses and see things from a different perspective at this point. That's how I see it. So
hopefully, Kay, this will help. I pulled this up. I took some clips from some of your TikTok. If you check out your TikTok video, I'm sorry. If you check out your TikTok channel, his name is Mayani, right? This is a great resource if you want to understand what we're dealing with Kamilah, specifically your story, but you go into some of these specifics. And that was one of the things that I put down on this documentary, just to kind of string some of this together so that we can kind of get at a high level, understand what's going on. In this clip here, you do a fantastic job of pointing out the obvious, what's right on their website regarding commerce around children. Let's check this out.
Peace and love, everybody. Kamilah Johnson here, and this page is dedicated to exposing the corruption of CPS. It's also bringing light to the story of my son, Mayani, who was medically kidnapped under the falsified name of Noah. Now, I'm already getting some pushback from TikTok. They just removed one of my videos telling me that I am violating community guidelines because I am attempting to show the people that CPS is a privatized corporation. So, for the sake of justice, I'm going to do it again. Now, I want to make this very much clear that these videos are for entertainment and educational purposes only, and I am not by any means giving legal advice. However, what I do want to touch base on is that what we all should know by now is that CPS is a privatized corporation, okay? Now, because TikTok wanted to say I am providing falsified information, let's go to Bing and see what they have to say. Is CPS a privatized corporation? CPS is typically a state agency, but some states have opted to contract with private companies to fill this role. According to the Children's Bureau part of U.S. Health and Human Services, those companies are regulated under state law and have authority from state law to intercede in families subject to statutory guidelines. TikTok, I didn't say it. They did. Now, let's move it along. What should be known, everyone, is that the United States / US is a business. It's a corporation, okay? As well as every state within it. It's a business. So what's important to remember is that when we hear these stories about CPS, we often forget the levels of hierarchy and how everything goes down. So let us keep this in mind because I'm here to teach you. Let's remember this, that the governor appoints the commissioners to each of these organizations, corporations, departments. He appoints the commissioners, okay? So he is first up. Remember that the term commissioner is someone who is commissioned to fulfill the duties of the departments or the organizations or the corporations, however you want to put it, okay? The term commission means you are paid. Now, let me go ahead and show you. A commissioner is a person charged with the management or direction of a board, a court, or a government agency. They have the power and responsibility to administer laws or rules related to a specific subject matter over which they have authority. In legal context, a commissioner can also be a judicial officer appointed by a supervising court to review complex cases and make recommendations for the court's consideration based on their review. Essentially, a commissioner holds a position of authority and plays a crucial role in overseeing and implementing regulations. Now, I'm just here to teach you, but just bear with me because we got to learn. We have to. If we do not learn, we cannot maneuver these systems strategically in a way to get our babies back. Now, let me clarify this, TikTok. Since I'm providing false information, let's make sure we clarify things. What is a commission? According to AI, is a payment for services, a fee paid to an agent or employee for transacting business or performing a service. Salespeople, for example, may earn a commission based on the sales they make. Hold on, let's dig a little bit deeper because I was trying to go somewhere else with this, but now I'm going somewhere else with this. Hold on. As you can see, I am at the Texas Department of Family and Protective Services website, right? And what I basically typed in is how to file a complaint against Texas CPS. Well, what you see is the Office of Consumer Affairs acknowledges that every question or complaint we receive. If you would like to speak with someone, call a toll-free number. But what I want you to focus on is the Office of Consumer Affairs, okay? So when you come here, you see that I am still on the Texas Department of Family and Protective Services, and we are at the Office of Consumer Affairs, in whom you make your complaints with, okay? As you can see that the Office of Consumer Affairs handles complaints about specific cases relating to the following, right? And because I'm just here to make you think, what is a consumer? And why would you make your complaints about the Texas Department of Family Protective Services to the Office of Consumer Affairs. Let's look up the legal definition for a consumer. Hot dog. Look at this. Well, TikTok, according to 15 U.S. Code 2301, the term consumer product means any tangible personal property which is distributed in commerce and which is normally used for personal, family, or household purposes. It also reads that the term consumer means a buyer other than for purposes of resale of any consumer product, any person whom such products is transferred during the duration of implied written warranty service contract applicable to the product, and any other person who is entitled by the terms of such warranty or service contract under applicable state law. But even if we wanted to just simplify it, a consumer is a person who buys or uses goods or services for personal, household, or domestic purposes. A consumer is not a seller, a manufacturer, or a trader who engages in economic activities. So what are y'all buying? Why is the Department of Family Protective Services complaint made through the Office of Consumer Affairs? What is the product that you're purchasing? These are the things that make you want to think, right? Stay tuned. There's more to come. TikTok. I violated no policies, okay? This is straight from the internet. Keep watching, y'all.
So that says it all. I mean, they're not hiding it. The problem is there's a lot of people out there that think they know that don't know. And so what we're dealing with is not only cognitive dissonance, but also pride. Because we've learned, especially over the last few years, that it's a whole lot easier to fool people than it is to convince them that they've been fooled. That's right there on their website, telling you that they're basically trafficking children. Because otherwise, what is the product, like you said?
Yeah, it's about the terms. It's about the terminologies. If you know the real definitions of the words that you're reading, like they call you a subject, you have to think about the all caps name that they have all these court documents in, these so-called affidavits. You know that that a corporation cannot do business with the living soul. You know that you're in a civil court, which is a court of equity. So why are we in here arguing about a flesh and blood person, a flesh and blood soul, when this is a civil court? What business do we have? There has to be equal consideration between both parties. What did I get? What did you give me? What did you give me to sue me for my flesh and blood son? In all actuality, every parent is being sued for their offspring. And so when this happens, you're so frantic that you don't know what these words and these terms really mean. So it's all about really knowing the true lawful definitions of these words and really putting them in their place. You have to put them in their place, but it all has to be done strategically, for sure. It all has to be done.
And you have to know that's, you mentioned it before, Kamilah, and we mentioned it Nick Tucker actually mentioned it on Freedom Friday last week on the Power Girl Power Hour. They're working on a completely separate spreadsheet that we don't even know exists, right? Because we're all we think of government as public policy. We think of government as a public entity, when in reality, they're trading on our social security numbers in the private. And that's what they're doing behind closed doors. That's not even what they're doing with CPS, where you can see it in your face. If you actually understood that we're all trust babies, that our sweat equity has poured into this account that we're not privy to, right? They just won't give us access. And even people that understand what's going on, like yourself, who could actually have agency on that spreadsheet that few people know about, this is how they treat you in the public. Right. So if you try to assert yourself in the private on that separate spreadsheet that few people know about, they just teach you a lesson, right? They make an example of you.
Yeah,
I
they
mean,
try to.
it feels right, exactly. It feels like that's what they're trying to do because you
Mhm.
have a voice. You know, Jeannie talked about how these parents don't have a voice. Well, you're quite the opposite example of that. You have a very strong voice. You have a very strong platform. You had that before this all started, and you saw in your own story how when you pointed the camera in their direction, that changed things, didn't it? It kind of changed the dynamic.
Yeah, and even with them being on camera, they still try to try to create the narrative to fit their story. But that's okay though. That's okay because like I said, you give them just enough rope to hang themselves. That's what happened.
I mean, there was a case here in Australia of a father. It was years ago. It was published in the sort of freedom, the anti-vax groups, and he was pulled up because he was traveling, and his children. Oh, he had a daughter that he was traveling with, and they were sleeping in the car. So the police pulled them up. They pulled up under these rules of child endangerment or child at risk, and they took away his child. So what he did was he raised some money, but he also went to court and asserted his ownership of the child. And I think that was the words that have to be people have to use, and the mindset that kind of has to change, because often within the social sphere, we've been conditioned to this idea of the child being an individual, having individual rights and being part of a wider tribe. And yet we, as their parents, in the technical terms, own them, like maybe not own their souls, but we have that legal ownership over them. We pay for everything for them. We, we manage all of their affairs. In a legal sense, they are our dependents. And these terms have sort of become out of vogue these days, and children are more seen to be belonging to the state. And so as soon as often child protection comes knocking, the first thing that parents comes to people's minds is, I have to justify myself. I have to justify that I'm a good parent. But why do people feel that way, that they need, if child protection comes to your door, that you have to be on the back foot to prove your innocence? It should be them that proves your guilt, right? But they don't come with anything. Often it's just a false report, and then they say they have to go through a whole procedure. They have to interview your children. And all of that process is actually there not to clear your name. That process is there to prove your guilt, to find something on you that they can use against you. And
When
I
they come
had
to
a
your door,
situation.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and you can't often record these meetings. This is what they tell you. Of course, you can do whatever you want within your home. And I remember way back in 2010 when child protection came along, and they wanted to interview all my children. I didn't know any better, let them do it, and it did get them out here. But one of the questions they asked my daughter at the time, I think she was about 8 years old, was there anything that made her anxious or afraid? And of course she said, no, there's nothing that makes me anxious and afraid. Of course they would push in on that question and they say, are you sure? Are you sure there's nothing that makes you anxious or afraid? And so she made up this story, and she said, oh, sometimes when my older sister Cheryl goes out, I feel a bit anxious. And of course they brought this to us and they said, why would she say this? But of course you're asking her a leading question. You're asking a child a question that you want a certain answer to. Now, of course, we were fortunate that the child protection was not against us, so they didn't use it. They were quite happy to clear that story. They were happy to come in, have cake and tea, and be entertained for the afternoon, and they absolutely adored the children. So they walked away from that particular incident. But then another thing happens is, once you're on their books, as soon as you're on their books, they will find an excuse, whatever it may be, to come back into your life. Say you have contact with the medical system. I'm not even sure whether that makes a difference or not, because it seems to me that the medical system can report any parent and they can sever parental rights, especially in regards to treatment of children, which I have a friend at the moment whose daughter is suffering in Westmead Hospital, and they have restricted her access to this child and are trying to prove that it's Munchausen syndrome, where it's all made up, because her mother is very assertive about wanting, and she's very well researched on all the things regarding long COVID, and this particular system doesn't want to hear it. They want to marginalize her, push her aside, and they have her daughter attached to a feeding tube, and a tube that takes out her waste. And it's a very sad situation. It's gone on for almost 2 years. The medical system has made so many mistakes, but in order to cover it up, what they do is they marginalize the parent, and they're going to try and blame her, and they're going to try and put it on psychological issues, which is another tactic that is used. Is some of the medical issues will turn around and say it's psychological, and then they will also try and blame it on a very caring mother. So if you appear too researched, too confrontational, it's like, oh, you must be a bit crazy and loopy, and then they'll have all their experts come in. And this is what people need to realize, is that if you're approached by the system, they're not your friend. And once you get that into your head, you can play the game better. Because people come along, and it's very natural they come along, they knock on your door, you think, oh my God, what have I done? Let me prove my innocence. Let me give them as much information. And that's a really bad move, because you're giving them, as you say, okay, you're giving him the rope to hang you on rather than the other way around. Let them do the talking and record everything, make sure you document everything. Ideally, I think someone said, get a lawyer, someone that you can trust, someone that is in your corner before all this all starts and unwinds, because every minute that you spend, everything you talk to them and tell them about is going to be used as evidence against you.
Yes.
If they can use it, they will.
We've talked about it many times in the Keeper of the Flame platform, where we do talk about the separate spreadsheet that they're on, and the greatest fraud ever committed on this, on the populace, that the bar attorneys, at least here in the United States, bar stands for British Accredited Registry. So they're accredited through the Crown. So this was my repeated firsthand experience. First of all, I couldn't get a lawyer to help me, even though I spoke to at least over 36 lawyers across multiple fields of law, because they didn't want to go up against my opponent. But if you do get to Jeannie's point, if you do get a lawyer, a bar attorney, like she said, everything all the money you give them, all of the information you give them will be used against you, because it's a big club. They're all part of the same club. And these people are making, to your point, Jeannie, billions of dollars on this industry that most people don't even understand as an industry. They don't understand that this is commerce. They think this is government. This is why what Kay is saying about the United States being a corporation, and again, we can only speak for our own country, but the United States is a corporation, and most United States, quote unquote, citizens don't understand what that even means. Can you give us just a quick, why do we care? Why should we care that the United States government, that we think is a public office that's there for our benefit, why does it matter that actually, in all actuality, it's a corporation? Why does that matter to us?
Because they've labeled you as dead. They labeled you as a corporate fiction. That's why you don't have any power when you walk in the courtrooms and you answer to the fictional name, the all caps corporation. The birth certificate, when it is created, is sent to the Secretary of State. What else is sent to the Secretary of State? The business registries, the LLCs get created through the Secretary of State. The Secretary of State is who keeps the secrets. Secretary, you know what I mean? And so until you understand that you are labeled as a dead fiction, basically you're nothing, you're a thing, you're property. And until you can put that into its proper perspective, you can never really grasp the concept of what it is that they're doing, because you're a commerce interacting within a commerce. That's why they call it the public and the private, so as long as you are operating in that public capacity and you're answering to that all caps name, and you're going in, you're hiring attorneys, and you're on their side of the field, then they're going to always do what it is that they want to do. But when you come in and you assert yourself as a living flesh and blood man or woman, non-assumption, Sir Juris, pro se, or however it goes, then it's just the cycle is just going to continue. Because how many people walk in the courtroom and say, I'm not the all caps name, I'm the living flesh and blood man? How many people? They just shuffle you through the courts. I've been in there. They just shuffle you through the courts, traffic you through the system, run a ringer around you. People answer the doors. Contracts get made verbally. When the CPS agent comes to your door, oh, we got a call about this. You talk to them, contract. Everything is contractual. So if you don't cancel the contracts or you refuse to enter into the contracts, then you are in fact what it is that they want you to be, and you're going to do what it is that they want you to do. You know, when the CPS agent came to my door, do you have a Fourth Amendment warrant? No. Okay, then we don't have anything to talk about. But because they already had a vendetta against me, they chose to maneuver how they wanted to. You know, so that's how it works. Contracts are made spiritually, written silently. That's how it is. That's what it is.
And we need to understand this in order to actually fight in the battlefield, because the system is rigged against us. And truly, it's been my experience, they're going to do every single thing they can to get you to react in an erratic, emotional, heightened way, so that they can point to you and say that you're the problem. So the most powerful thing you can do is to do exactly what Kay's talking about, and that's to let them make all the moves. Just sit back and wait to see what they do, because before you know it, they'll have lined all of the pins up for you to knock down. But if you're so busy trying to play their game on their rules, like Jeannie said, they come to you, you're trying to prove your innocence. That, we've talked about it before. This is a mindset. What we're trying to do here in the Power Girl multiverse is to completely change your mindset, to make you, to help you understand, that they see you as chattel. Yeah. You are not, in their terms, you are not an equal. You are subject. The Walking Dead.
Yeah.
And so can you expand on that a little bit, just so that because there's a lot of people, I'm sure, that are listening that have no idea what you're talking about when you talk about The Walking Dead. Can you explain a little bit about maritime law? Not to get too deep into the subject, but this is truly the core of it, because when you're not playing on the proper battlefield, because they're on how are you even supposed to have a conversation with somebody that's on a completely different battlefield? You have to get not only on their terms, but you need to get above their terms, because you've got to get that angle. And the only way to do that is to educate yourself. And it surprises me. This is the biggest reason why I just played that clip of yours from your TikTok channel. What surprises me the most is a lot of people out there do not understand the power of just legal definitions. If you just actually pulled up the legal definition of the word that you're using, you can see that it's all right there in black and white, right?
Yeah. And if you representing yourself in court and they say, oh, the child did this, objection. Can you give me the lawful definition of child? Objection. Can you give me the lawful definition of parent? Objection. Can you give me the lawful definition of civil? Objection. Can you present to me the contracts that I have with the Department of Family Protective Services that says that we have equal considerations on both? When you start to speak about the stuff on the back end, then it's going to silence them. And you can watch them. You see them. They turn red. They get frantic. They don't know what to do. They get to moving around. You know what I mean? You can tell when you struck the right nerve,
Oh, yeah.
And so Walking Dead is basically a person who lives in fear. The reason that people don't say anything or they're scared to step in behind the veil is because they fear what these people I'm not going to call them people, what these entities can do to them. But see, I have a different perspective of death. You know what I mean? I have a different perspective, because in all actuality, any person who allows themselves to be subjected to mistreatment, oppression, poverty, any kind of enslavement, you already dead. You already dead here. So you rather have yourself walking dead than to stand up for what's right, than to live in righteousness.
I mean, what I've also seen through my travels and through parents who've battled CPS, it's very important to have a community around you And where, I think when initially my contact came with CPS was we were quite isolated, lived in a remote town, pretty much kept to ourselves, and really had very few connections. So I didn't make that mistake when we moved, got into homeschool communities, got children involved in various activities, and then it was a safety net. And this is where I think it has to be almost a local community, because local people know each other. And of course, also the online community. If you can combine all of that together, you need a voice in all of this. You make yourself the least desirable target, because it's the hardest work to keep you in the system. This is how the game is played. We're probably not going to be able to save 400,000 children at this present moment in time, unless that there is a change in the legislation, unless we basically disband the whole CPS system, which is what we need to do. I mean, ultimately, people might think that's a horrific idea, but if more harm is done by a CPS system, then why does it exist? And we need to start looking out for each other as neighbours again, looking out for children on that level, because I'm sure that actually works a lot better than the government trafficking system that we currently have. But if you have those local supports in place, very important. If you write to and you connect to your local members of parliament, congressmen, make sure you're heard by these people in power, because they still have power in the world sense. And this is what I found helped me, was reaching out, making sure that I had those connections. And I didn't actually end up having any issues, even though, we went through all sorts of things, including, police investigation. I came through and my children weren't separated from me. Because you have to play the game on a day-to-day basis. I know everything that you're saying, Kay, is true. I didn't bring those things up only because these people weren't ready for it. I mean, I think you have to make a judgment call as to whether the person that on the other end, we can talk about this here, but is the person on the other end that you're dealing with, they're a human too, and are they ready to hear this? And ultimately, you win more friends over if you can find a way to connect to them, for them to find that empathy, that heart to heart with you and your situation, understand what you're feeling as a mother. And then they will actually do everything in their power to try and help you exit the system. And that's what I found, that they were able to then empathize with my situation and find me a way out, the fastest way out possible. Because there are good people in the system. You have to appeal to the goodness inside them. Often they're actually just doing things because they feel as though they're doing good. It's the hardest thing is when people believe truly that they are on the right side. And we saw that through COVID. A lot of people thought that the jab was the best thing since sliced bread, and they pushed it on other people. And as wrong as that was, it was weaponized. They were weaponizing the goodness of people against each other. And why some of the countries that we have seen fall into the most dystopian hellholes are because there are actually really good people in them. And who are they that are doing this? These are, as we've outlined in our 2-hour podcast, who are they? These non-entities who are non-humans behind the agenda that are farming humans. I think if we can think of it that terms, that we are being farmed. And what does a farmer do? It culls sheep that they don't want. It decides who breeds, who doesn't. It takes the young away from the mother. It takes the energy away from.
That's the definition of chattel. That's the definition of property. That's how you're able to do it. And you want to destroy CPS. CPS is going to destroy itself. That's how it's going to be. It's going to self-destruct. Anything that comes in with corruption, anything that comes in with malice and cruel intention, it's going to come back around. This system is going to destroy itself from the top to the bottom. So as long as we continue to fight and push against this system, what you resist persists. That's what they want you to do. Let them keep fighting us. Let them keep protesting. Let them keep coming to court. Let them keep crying. They want to watch the mother in sorrow. They enjoy your sorrow. They enjoy your sadness. You say they human, But human, the true definition for human is a monster. Means being like human being, means being like a man, being like a woman. That is not a living soul. So that once again goes back to the etymology. So, you know, it's I see things on a different perspective when it comes to other folks. And I feel like given that the truth is what'll set the people free.
That's
The
right.
truth is what's gonna set them free. And that's just how I see it.
I mean, I think it's very difficult to not see it that way when you're in the battlefield and you're under attack. To see these people as not entities, as non-human, because what they're doing to you is inhumane. I guess I'm stepping back from it in the situation that I do think that the people who I dealt with in CPS were trying to do the right thing, but the system itself is corrupt and they were caught up in it. And who designed the system? And if we go back to that film, Save the Babies, you know, it is designed by very evil people. And why do they design the system? You know, they design the system because they know they can keep most people will just go to work and do their job. And I appeal to people who are going to work, who are in these positions. You don't have to do your job that way. There are ways to subvert the system. There are ways to help people out without risking your job. And it's the same that happens with COVID. There were ways to help people keep their jobs who didn't want to take the jab. You didn't have to play along with the system. And we have to understand that people have their own lives to live, and we can only push so far. The Overton window is where it's at right now. And yes, you're right, it will collapse itself, but we need to help it collapse itself. And there's an organization called, which I wanted to call out, where was it? familyright.org. It was set up by a woman too who has had her children taken away from her, and it's got 35,000 members now. So this is a great start. That there is power in numbers of people gathering together and what they're after is jury court cases. So at the current moment, what happens in the family court system is the judges make all the decisions, and we can see that even through the divorce courts. And I had a woman approach me from LinkedIn, and she was telling me about a situation where her father, I think, was essentially taking her property, and she's an adult woman, she's not a child, and he was using the family court system to do it. Now, I won't explain this. The story is quite complex, but what I found interesting about it was she had approached 70 lawyers in Canberra, and all of them had refused to take her case because everyone knew that this judge was completely crazy and would do whatever he wanted and basically give this property to her father. But they didn't want to step out of line because then they would be punished. Now, it's a flaw in the law that we can have judges that are not adherent to any particular rules or even moral guidelines, and they are not accountable. So, like, how do you make judges accountable for their actions when they actually go against the Constitution? And
that's because they operate under the oath of the bar. They operate under the oath of the bar. You have to make them operate under the constitutional oath. I don't know how it works in Australia, but they have the oath to the bar first. You're deemed guilty before you even.
But they're not operating under the Constitution, as you say. They're operating on their own rules and
their oath to the crown, to be more specific.
Yeah, to the bar. Yeah, to the crown. Yeah, exactly. And that's universal.
This is the demise of society right now. What we're seeing is that the court system is non-functioning. You have a former president being, put through courts on trumped up charges. The court system is definitely not functioning.
The court is a bank.
And I think, I'm again, just a mind shift, because again, if we continue to use their vernacular and their way of thinking, we're never going to break out of the mind box. The court is functioning exactly as it was intended to function. The problem is that the populace is just now waking up to that fact. This has been going on for a very, very, to your point, I don't remember who, I think it was you that made the point, Jeannie. This has been going on for a very, very long time. We're talking about, and we're going to get into, hopefully in the next podcast, we have been building up to tell the story of why. Why are they taking these children? Why are they attacking the masculine? Why are they attacking the feminine? Why are they attacking the family? And it's because they see us, and especially our children, because they are the purest form of our energy. They see our energy as currency. This
Yes,
this
that's
world
what it
is
is.
built on the currency, what I'm calling the currency of chaos. Because as long as they can keep you in chaos, they can keep you in fight or flight. You cannot think properly and you cannot fight properly. Then you add that they're playing with a completely different set of rules that are there on the books. It's all there in black and white, but you don't even know that it exists. And and that's why I mean, to me, I'm very, very passionate about having the conversations that people can't handle, that they don't like, that they might feel uncomfortable, might trigger them a little bit. I can take the heat because I mean, at this point, if I mean, this is one of the reasons why I think Kamilah is such a powerful freedom warrior, if not one of the most powerful that I've met, because she's got that forward thinking. We have to start claiming our words. We have to start claiming our power. We have to stop playing by their rules. And
Mhm.
if the freedom warriors who have this knowledge that so many in industry don't have, frankly, I'm just going to put it right out there. People
Mhm.
do not understand. They don't know what they don't know until they know it. Well, if we
Mhm.
continue to play and what do you call it? You know, if we continue to play along those lines, that will, because the people that don't know, it's going to trigger them. Well, I say deal with your trigger. If something I'm saying is triggering you, then that's on you. That's not on me. I'm not going to stop speaking my truth. I mean, it's amazing what I have learned over just the last 6 months. I wish I had known it 3 years ago when I was in the heat of my battle. But what I've learned over the last 6 months from people like Kamilah, who speak out and talk on these things, no matter how uncomfortable it is, no matter how many people, pish posh or whatever they do, socially, to keep us down. That's all part. I mean, that's when, that person becomes the Agent Smith in front of you. It's like, 1 minute you think you're talking to your brother, your sister, your husband, your wife, and the next minute you're talking to the matrix, directly to the matrix, because you've said something to trigger their cognitive dissonance, and they're going to
Mhm.
defend that matrix to their last breath. And it doesn't
Mhm.
matter. It doesn't matter the relationship. The Bible speaks to it. Mother against daughter, husband against wife. This is where we're at. And so if we don't start speaking affirmation, if we don't start educating, and I am talking to the leaders of industry now, we have got to get past our pretenses. We
Mhm.
really need to get past our pretenses. We need to understand there's a lot about the world that we do not know. Why?
Mhm.
Because we've been lied to. There's no
Mhm.
shame in that game, right?
Mhm.
We've all been deceived. The ones that are holding on to pride, that can't let go of their pretenses, they're just going to get left behind. If we don't start speaking and leaning into this and cutting through the veil, again, because to my point where I come from, the veil's been ripped in half. It was ripped in half long time ago, but
Mhm.
the enemy, he prances through the world looking for who he can kill and destroy, and he convinces people that they don't have any power. Well, until we
Mhm.
start asserting that power,
Mhm.
educating ourselves, looking up the definitions,
Yeah.
talking about things that make people uncomfortable. That's what we do here in the Power Girl Multiverse, and I am totally fine with. I'm thankful for every single watch that I get on, for the work that we do, and even if
Mhm.
it's 50 watches, that's enough for me, because we need to get the information out. I think it's the highest compliment in the world that I don't have 25,000 followers, because that means I'm not mainstream. We are cutting edge, and we are piercing the veil. We have to do that. There is too much at stake. There are too many people that are waking up right now. We can't kowtow. We cannot kowtow to old mentality and old
Mhm.
behavior. I mean, if we look just at your podcast, Kamilah, this is probably the best podcast that I've seen you do. They did such an incredible job with this. I highly recommend anybody if you really want to understand Kamilah's story, they did such a good job of telling this story. And you can see that the views are just skyrocketing. So that tells me that people are starting to understand the moment, and people like you, Kamilah, you truly are just, to me, a perfect storm of intelligence, integrity, knowledge. And we have to, guys, we got the leaders of industry. You can hold on to your pride if you want, but you're going to be left behind, because those of us who understand the moment, who know what you don't know, we're just going to take the world back. It's just as simple as that. And we're going to do it one little bite at a time. And you can hang on to your pretenses if you want, but the world is changing. It's the people's mentalities are changing. People's mindsets are changing. Kamilah, you represent a community, and the fact that it's happening on TikTok, to me, is just as powerful as what's happening on LinkedIn. Right? Because TikTok is this cesspool of social media where you just get so many things. I've seen so many things, bad things happen on TikTok, just in my own personal freedom walk. But then you have this community of people that are talking about the fraud, because if anybody who's not talking about the fraud at this point is feeding into the matrix. We need to understand the playing field that they're on so that we can fight the battles effectively. Does that mean that we're going to be successful every time? No. But what I've learned in warfare is that actually, when you're losing, you're winning. If you can understand if you learn, if nothing else, if you just learn and you see how they operate, and you see how they try to trap you, and they see how they try to draw you out, how they try to influence people around, the most powerful power they have, if they have any power, is the useful idiots that believe in their narrative. And that includes leaders of industry that refuse to let go of the old paradigm. We are moving into this new earth, whether you like it or not. So, I suggest you get on board or get out of the way. If you want to hold on to your pretenses and your old world, I don't know what to say on that. I mean, that's what we're trying to do here, is level up. We cannot level up by playing the game the way we played it up until now. That's just my 2 cents.
And parents, the mothers and fathers, they should stay encouraged, because the horror stories are the horror stories are there, but you have to speak life. You have to speak your desired outcome. You have to believe it. You have to know it without a shadow of a doubt, and not be moved, be unshakable, be affirmed, be solid in what it is that you desire. They came in, they kidnapped my son, but we need to encourage each other, just be encouraged and just stay strong. Don't wallow in that low vibrational, energy. Stay uplifted, stay close to the source. And that's just what's going to get you through. That's what's going to help you out.
And that, again,
there's a reason why they keep people silenced.
Yeah.
It's because they don't want people to tell their stories.
Well, the last thing they want you to do, the last thing they want the audience to do is to have empathy for the speaker. That's why they silence us, because they're desperately trying to move us away from our own instincts in the spirit, as human beings, to another human being. And social media, we talked about that. I think it was on that podcast you keep mentioning, the Who Are They? We talked about how this social media is used to influence people's minds and mindsets and their thinking. And, as a digital warrior, I get attacked constantly simply for speaking my firsthand truth, because it goes against what so many people believe in their minds to be true. Well, if you were I've been greatly deceived and greatly betrayed. And as painful as it was to wake up to the reality that I was living in and how truly false it was, I am so grateful that I was able to do that, because I would still be in that situation if I had not been able to allow my ego to die over and over and over and over again, and just be able to be convinced that I might be wrong, or there might be something that I don't already know. You know, we all walk around, I think it's mostly because of these smartphones, we all walk around thinking we know so much. And if we can't listen to somebody else's firsthand testimony and have empathy for that person in the moment that they're in, and support whatever cause, even if it's just sharing out a podcast or showing up and commenting. Speaking of which, the comments are blowing up. I want to say it's Infinite Cataclysm Hudson, I believe, says funny St. Jude came up in conversation 2 days ago. This is what's happening. The quantum wants to correct the record. The quantum wants to right things. You know, God is the great judge. He's going to come in and wipe all of this nastiness out, you know, but we have to stand up in our sovereignty and demonstrate that in our own domain, in whatever that means. So, and when we start to do that, you can see here, as this comment is evidence of, and, you know, maybe this is reaching a little bit, but St. Jude came up in conversation 2 days ago. Here comes this movie. You know, we've been planning this podcast for a few weeks now, and here comes this movie to support what we're saying and show that it's not just three crazy women up on a panel. And we just don't know. I've seen the reason why I have so much hope is because I've watched this great awakening from the last year of the dragon, which was 12 years ago, when I was woken up, and I've watched the progression. And I've been in the comment section, and I've been in the trenches, and I've seen where people's minds are. And I'm telling you, yeah, there are a lot of useful idiots out there. There's no doubt about it. There's a lot of NPCs. There's a lot of people that are just going to hold on to their pretenses no matter what you try to convince them. But there's also a lot of people that are waking up. And that's because people are being bold and stepping into the moment and leaning in to the terror. You know, because again, if I have allowed my ego to die, if I've allowed my circumstances to break me open, now if I actually connect with the Creator and surrender my life to Him, now I'm unstoppable because He's going to pour into me. This has been my firsthand experience, you know, and I have been actuated because of my trauma, because of what they used to break me. Actually made me. There would be no Power Girl Productions if it wasn't for cancel culture. So I can say thank you to cancel culture, you know, and to the chains. And the biggest chains that I lost in that whole process is what people think about me, because I couldn't care less. And I really mean that with all my heart. I'm here for mankind. I'm here for Team Humanity. But I am not concerned with people's pretenses because I know what I know. There's a difference between, you know, fighting in the battlefield and getting blood, sweat, and tears flying, you know, it really drives in the lesson. Let's put it that way. And you learn a lot. That when you actually start to play 5D chess with these creatures, you understand how they operate. You understand how they work, because they come at you in 7,000 different ways. And if you, like Kamilah said, if you just sit and what does the Bible say? Be still and know that I am God. What happens, what's been my experience is when you can actually perfect that, it's taken me years and years and years. That was not easy for me. You know, let it be was definitely not my strong point, but I finally just through trial, just truly by trial by fire, I finally had to perfect it because I just didn't have any choice. I had so many flying monkeys and so much was being ripped from me. I had no choice but to perfect that. Now that I have gotten so good at being still and just knowing that He is God, the benefit to that is you become a perfect reflective surface. And the demons who come at you end up scaring themselves away. Because why? Because they see their own reflection in your still cool pond. You know, when you become that glass, when you become that pond of glass, they can see themselves and they end up scaring themselves away. So, you know, that's why we talk about these things. That's why we're bringing this at podcast level. That's why we're doing this closer to the heart, because we are trying to implore to the people who are leaders. We consider our LinkedIn audience to be very unique, to be very special. And, you know, I'm not browbeating anybody out there. I'm just saying, It's getting really dark. And if the stars don't start to shine, then the darkness will take over. We have got to step into these spaces. And to Jeannie's point, you never know. You don't have to do your job the way everybody does it around you. All it takes is one person to step out of line.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the whole thing comes crumbling down. So, that's why we keep coming back and talking about these things and showing them, qualifying them, showing them the firsthand testimony is powerful, but it's also important to see the statistics, to see the stories, to see the headlines, to see how the matrix is actually, now that the freedom warriors are finally, we've had enough. We've had enough. We are done. We're not going to take it anymore. Now that we've reached that point, the quantum is starting to unfold. It's starting to obey, because we are the creators. We are images of God. We are image bearers. Nobody has more power. I agree with Kamilah 1000%. We need to get it out of our heads that these people have power. We need to stop calling them the elite. They are the predator class. They are parasites. They cannot survive without us.
That's it.
And I think that illusion of power is what actually silences people and parents. But I was pleased to see a comment yesterday on my LinkedIn onto the post, and it's by a CEO. I lost custody of my triplets for 5 years, and one of my triplets is 20. And the courts and the system structure created this abusive situation where my daughters were sexually abused in their mother's care. I mean, I think it's very difficult to read and imagine what it'd be like to lose custody of your children for 5 years. And to be able to put this out publicly now, a lot of parents have suffered at this hands. And it's sort of interesting, like when you put your story out there yourself, how many people come out of the woodworks and say, "Oh yeah, this happened to me," or "Yes, I've experienced this," because there's a terrible lot of shame. People feel this sense of shame that CPS has entered into their life, but to know that there is no shame in it, that in fact that you've been, I guess you could look at it in a way that Kamilah has, is that you've been chosen to, this is your moment in time to step up into this special situation that you find yourself in, because you now can, pull down the system. And I'll say a special hello to Hudson too. Does anyone have in the chat, if anyone in the chat has a question they want to pop in, you can do it now. We'll leave it open. It's really good to see the chat interacting.
Yes. Thank you to Autumn again for showing up, being our cheerleader. She was there on Freedom Friday. It was fantastic. We don't usually get the interaction on Freedom Friday. These Freedom Warrior stories can be a little bit intimidating for sure. We actually acknowledge that. We get much more. That's actually comforting to me, because this is the reason why I created this Closer to the Heart space, because we have to have these conversations, but we're trying to do it. This is why having this panel is so important. Having so many different perspectives is so important, because, Jeannie continually brings up where people are truly at. We have to meet people where they're at. And it's like this delicate balance of bursting their bubbles, but loving them as well, right? Like loving people where they're at, and being okay with it when they have to, some people are just not going to be able to let go, and that's fine. And I'm learning, because my story has been so painful, to accept people for where they're at. Does that mean that I silence myself or I self-censor myself? No, but I do have empathy, and I'm not mad, because that's, to me, I feel like that's part of the psyop, right? Is for me to get mad at people that are clinging onto their cognitive dissonance. I can only speak to myself, and I have certainly fallen into that trap, but I've since learned that, that just perpetuates the narrative, because the more you act out this false persona, that they make you look like you're crazy, you're losing your mind, you're just an upstart, or whatever they say. When when you're getting angry at somebody, and it could be somebody you love dearly, because they're not, I'll just speak for myself. They're not seeing my side of the story. They're people you'd think love you, care for you. They don't want to see the side of the story of the freedom warrior, because it shatters their illusions. I have to learn to accept that and to love people for who they are, where they're at, and just, just try to speak my truth without being, without being too extra, I guess. It's for the but it is a delicate balance because we are, I mean, it really is the 11th hour, guys. At least here in the United States, I've seen all of these other countries go through these various iterations. I was talking to Autumn this morning about somebody who's leaving the UK because of the situation that is happening over there in the UK and how bad it's getting. Jeannie, you've seen it yourself in Australia. We're kind of having our turn in the barrel here in the United States because somehow the cognitive dissonance is so thick around here that people just, there's so many out there that don't even realize, the moment that we're in. But, because of the moment that we're in, we really do have to take these long strides and figure out a way to get through the fog, the mental fog. And I understand it because it's a defense mechanism, right? When you're dealing with trauma, what do they used to call it? They used to call it shell shock. When you're dealing with trauma, it shocks you into a state of almost complacency. And your abusers are counting on that. They want you to stay there.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people feel that they just want life to go back to normal. But
Yeah.
nothing is actually showing that that's, actually happening. There is, on a social level, people need to just start speaking up and it's like this. I had a new car. I bought a new car last year. And I actually never noticed this car on the road until we bought this particular model. And now all I see is this car is just literally everywhere. This Civic is everywhere. And I think to myself, well, how is that? It's because I took a notice. And sometimes it's just like that's all you have to do. You just have to drop your truth bombs. It could be something like, oh, gee, there's an awful lot of young people suddenly dying since the shot. Like just a little truth bomb like that, you drop it down there, and all of a sudden they'll see it everywhere. Something that they didn't connect the dots to before. So it doesn't have to be huge. It's just every day in your life, just consciously moving throughout your life. And then, of course, you just get bolder and bolder. And this is the whole thing, is that once you step into it, like people probably think that, I've been on LinkedIn for a long time. I've actually only been here quite active since 2021 to the end, middle of, when it all started. And I remember thinking to myself, my first post, it was just so nerve-wracking.
Oh, yeah.
Would I get the support? And actually, it is actually one of the most supportive platforms. I love it compared like Twitter. I sort of expect that angst and that it's an incredibly supportive community. People do like have intellectual conversations with each other, and the most part are very respectful. A lot of the trolls you can either just block or they've completely vanished now. And yeah, so it's like a marketplace of ideas. I've seen
That's
people
right.
gather behind the scenes to work together, like we are, and other people are working on various other models of how to get out of this world the way, because there's many ways that this is being unraveled, legally.
right.
People setting up companies, things like what Nick is doing on regenerative farming, and people are just finding their place. Not everyone has the same calling within this whole journey. It's like we're on individual journeys, but we're on a collective journey as well.
Mhm.
And this collective journey is towards a better world and
That's
a
right.
freer, loving, kind, and we have to imagine that. And I think this is what the problem is we've been put in the media's put into our consciousness that this is as good as it gets.
Yep.
Like they put the bad news out there. And even in terms of politics, it's like, okay, you've got the Republicans saying, oh, look, we're just better than the Democrats. So that's not really hard to do. That's not really hard to be. We're
No.
better than the crazy. We've actually got to raise the bar for our politicians and say, well, if I was in politics, this is what I would do. I would, abolish all these things. I would make these structural changes, significant changes. And I would look at regenerative farming. I would stop the poisoning of the earth. and really care for the environment in a true way, and care for people, care for families. Let mothers have a choice whether they want to go to work or not. These things reduce the price of housing, whatever ways that they can come up with. They got the housing prices to sky high levels. They can certainly figure out a way economically of making it affordable again. So all these problems that can be solved, we have to hold all our leaders in the world to higher standards than what we are currently. And I think what happens is we've just become lulled into this sense of either doom and gloom. You've got these kind of freedom people who are like, it's all over. We're all going to die. Armageddon's coming. We may as well just pack up and go home. Or we imagine and we dream for a better world, because unless we do that, unless we truly believe that, it's not going to happen, because we are the creators. And if we create this kind of dystopian future, if we think that's what it is, I think we'll go through quite a period of turmoil and instability, because it takes the tearing down of the system, or the system collapsing on itself, for things to change. But then, of course, we have to be part of the rebuild. And I'm seeing behind the scenes, a lot of people are already taking up their arms and working towards that social change, which is fantastic to see. And I'm just putting out there to give people hope that, we're not all about doom and gloom here.
Yes.
We are here to manifest the new reality.
Yes. What do you think, Kay?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's what I've been saying. You speak a thing, declare a thing, and it shall be so. Instead of, I feel like in my life and what works for me is that I don't speak on what happened in the past. I only speak on what I desire to see. And it's not a matter of if it's going to happen. It's already done from the moment that I thought it. That's the power of being a creator, and you live without doubt. So if we came together collectively as a group of people who have been scorned and oppressed by these unjust systems, but if we came together collectively and began to declare our victory, began to declare our overcoming, begin to declare our healing, then those things shall be. If we started to speak a thing and declare a thing that these babies are coming home, that these babies, even though they have been stripped from the home, they are safe, they are divinely protected. We started to declare that our enemies are falling one by one, that our enemies are being exposed one by one, individually, in every manner, in every area of their lives. We begin to speak these things and we begin to know that it's done without a doubt, then things will begin to change, because that's the power of humanity.
That's right.
When the news come on, nobody makes you watch the news. You watch it because you want to. Everything is free will. So if you choose to participate in the shenanigans, then that's what's going to persist in your life. Nobody told you to watch the news. Nobody told you to believe what they told you to believe. You chose to be a part of the programming, just like you can make the choice to be in power.
Mm-hmm.
Politicians, I don't care about them. They don't mean nothing to me. In my eyes, the people who are trying to come against me are weak. The people who are trying to come against me have already lost. They are my footstools, right? We have to use the Bible, the affirmations in the Bible. The Bible is a book of laws. You use those words to make your life better, to create the journey that you want to see. So if you're not going to utilize the word accordingly, then what is it there for? So that's what I say. So that's what's brought me when my son, when I was locked up and I didn't have any control, only thing I could do was thank you, God, my child is safe. Thank you, God. Even though these things have happened in between, I know that justice is mine. You know what I mean? I know that I will be liberated. I know that I will be vindicated. I know that I am redeemed. So that's how I live. That's how I walk. That's how I speak. And nobody can deter me. I don't care about any challenge that comes a part of the journey. Okay. The outcome is always victory for me. And that's
victory
the mindset that we have to have.
Victory after victory after victory.
From glory to glory to glory.
That's right.
That's all it is. That's all it is for me. And that's for every parent who aligns with that. That's the type of support groups that we need, where we just encourage and we uplift and we speak and declare these things within each other, within these people. And you're going to watch it fall. That's the power of God. That's the power of the divine source. That's the type of, I don't see it as no small thing. Oh God, if the universe was created by the infinite, then there is nothing that cannot be done through us who was created in the image of the creator, So That's just how I live. That's how I'm still standing. People say, "Oh, I don't know how you did it." I don't even know how I did it, but all I know is that I wasn't chosen. This is everything that I'm going through was already written.
That's right.
But I had to make the choice. What you gonna do? You gonna break? You gonna fold? Or you gonna trust the process and know that you are an overcomer no matter what takes place in your life? Everything, we have a free will. We have a choice, and it's not easy when our babies, such innocent, innocent, precious babies, are stripped from us. But at the same time, we gotta stand. That's the power of a woman.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
You know?
Yes.
That's the power of a woman. And nobody
Yes.
can do anything with a woman except what she allows you to do.
That's right.
Yes, ma'am. So I'm 100% agreement with Jeannie. Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Mhm.
Well, I'll tell
Yeah,
you
I
what.
really,
Go ahead, Jeannie.
I really admire that you're stepping into this when you're in such a vulnerable situation.
Mm.
And I think people, it's easy to do when you know that your children aren't at risk, but your child is already in the system and taken away from
Mm-hmm.
you. And it is a very brave thing to be standing here and speaking to us. And I would encourage other parents to find a way to put their story out there. It may not be as you have put your story out, just maybe in a comment, maybe or approaching an organization, or just getting their voice out there so people know that there are actually 400,000, children in care right now, and 100,000 or so are due to be adopted out. And I don't sure if I mentioned it, but for every permanent adoption, it's some fee of $4,000 to $6,000 that they get. But mostly they actually do want to keep them within the system for as long as they can, because that makes the most amount of money. This is the way the chattel system works. Now,
Mm-hmm.
parents are able to wrap their heads around this, that it's not by compliance that they will work their way through, but it's by non-compliance and by gathering together and by, again, manifesting that they will get their children back. The belief system is there. I never believed that I would lose my children, and I worked actively to have them back. And really, in terms of the word, I see it as a living word, as you each day figure out what's the plan today? What am I supposed to be doing today? Kind of like what we're doing, Christina. We kind of
Yeah.
figure out what are we doing,
We're
and then it
totally
all just
winging
seems
it.
to fall in. It all seems to fall into place because it's a
It sure
living
does.
word. It's a living voice. And some people will say that's all very new agey, but what is it? What is God if he's not living, if it's just in a book, right? It's a being, it's the source, it's energy. That's who we are. And it's what they're trying to harvest from us. Keep our spirits high, because they will never break us. Never. Nothing will break the spirit that is within us, which is stronger that's in the world. And if you actually, I often think about it this way too, when you can manifest these things, it's what is actually keeping these people in play is, what is keeping them animated? What stops the spirit from being withdrawn from them, that they just, are non-existent anymore, or move away, get another job, or whatever it is. What is it that is it's that we have to walk through whatever journey that we're walking through until it's kind of like a boss, like you're playing a game and we've just leveled up, and so we have to defeat that boss to get to the next level.
That's right.
And they're
That's
only
right.
staying in play because we're there to play the role that we have to in order to dismantle and win the game at the end.
That's a great analogy. Those are excellent closing remarks, ladies. Thank you so much, both of you. Jeannie, for showing up every week and somehow managing all of this that you do at home, and this schedule that we do weekly. I really appreciate you. And Kay, for all of the encouragement that you give me behind the scenes. You've really become a true friend, a dear friend. It's been powerful to watch you. You've really poured gas back into my tank. I've seen a lot of these heartbreaking stories. I've interviewed quite a few of these parents that are going through these things, and to see you rise to the occasion the way that you have has been very, and will continue to do. And I know you will be victorious, because you're right. It's already written. And, like we said offline, it's funny that they think that they changed his name to Noah, because God is going to use Every single weapon formed against us to our good. And that's the power of the firsthand testimony, is when these incredible freedom warriors with these powerful stories can come and tell you that, to show the victory after victory after victory after, as a dear pastor of mine that I listen to a lot talks about, Patrick Kitely, and I hear it all the time: victory after victory after victory. That's what we're doing. We're bringing victory into this space where usually it's doom and gloom. We're trying to do something different. We do have to talk about the problem because we have to identify the hazards, right? But then in order to control the hazards, we have to rise above it. We have to educate ourselves. We need to enlighten each other. I mean, if nothing else, here's a challenge for the week for those who are listening. See if you can do this. Just this one little thing. If you catch yourself censoring your speech to fit in, I would just ask that you don't. That when you get that catch in your spirit and you feel like you want to censor yourself because you're afraid of what people will think, just do it. Just say it. See what happens. Because every time you do take that step, it gets easier and easier. It's just like muscle memory. You before you know it, you're yoked like Kamilah, and you're ready to fight any giant, right? That's how we do it here in the Power Girl multiverse. So I want to say again, thank you so much for showing up, Kamilah. I really appreciate you. We're going to have you again many, many times. We're going to get an update on your story very soon on Freedom Friday. And I want to say thank you, of course, out there to Autumn Maddox. Thank you so much for being such a huge fangirl of the show, of the team. We are assembling this incredibly powerful team of forward thinkers, of freedom warriors, of people that are just sick of it. And we're not going to take it anymore. We're going to stand up. We're not going to comply. We're going to speak our mind, and we're going to completely shift the playing field to our favor. It's all going to come falling down. Wait, it's coming. I see it. It's happening every day. It's already done. It's already done. So thanks everyone who showed up. Really appreciate you. We will be back next Tuesday. We're not even really sure, what direction we're going to go, except that we have been building up to tell you the story of the why. We talked about the who. These last 3 episodes have been building up the how. How do they do it? But now we want to get into the why. Why are they doing this? Why are they taking children? Why are they brainwashing adults? Why are they creating this matrix around us to keep us enslaved? Why do they do all that? Well, there's a very simple answer to that question, and we're going to explore that next week. It's going to be another painful one, so buckle up, but hopefully you will show up. I know the people that show up here every week are brave warriors that can, just sit through a 2-hour podcast. That alone is a huge feat these days, that is driven towards the 3-minute, blurb. If you can't get your story out in 3 minutes, people don't want to deal with you. Those of you who stay and listen to these 2-hour podcasts, you are what this is all about. This is the whole reason why we show up. It's not easy for us to do this and get together on all these different time zones with all these different ideas. And produce these podcasts in this way, but you guys make it worth it. So we want to say thank you to you. You are why we are here. And thank you to everybody who commented. Thank you to Hudson for saying hello. Of course, Autumn, thanks for showing up. Everybody, thank you so much. Have a fantastic week. We got a great Freedom Friday on the Power Girl Power Hour on Rumble. We're going to get back into the food conversation because that is another way that they are infiltrating us. We talked about that on the attack on the divine masculine and how they're using our foods to poison us and what we can do about that. There are some powerful people that we're finding on LinkedIn that are doing some very powerful things out there. So we want to, give you as much information to empower you, enlighten you, uplift you, and ultimately elevate Team Humanity. Thank you so much, ladies. We will see you next week. Take care.
Love ya.
Bye.
Yay! We're going to lead out with a song as always. Here we go.
You are not hidden. There's never been a moment you were forgotten. You are not hopeless. Though you have been broken, your innocence stolen. I hear you whisper underneath your breath. I hear your SOS, your SOS. I will send out an army to find you in the middle of the darkest night. It's true, I will rescue you. There is no distance that cannot be covered over and over. You're not defenseless. I'll be your shelter, I'll be your armor. I hear you whisper underneath your breath. I hear your SOS, your SOS. I will send out an army to find you in the middle of the darkest night. It's true, I will rescue you. I will never stop marching to reach you in the middle of the hardest fight. It's true, I will rescue you. I hear the whisper underneath your breath. I hear you whisper you have nothing left. I will send out an army to find you in the middle of the darkest night. It's true, I will rescue you. I will never stop marching to reach you in the middle of the hardest fight. It's true, I will rescue you. Oh,